Hey Stargazer, welcome back and welcome to April. Not only have we got a whole new week of astrology, but we've also got a whole new month. And it's going to be intense. Very intense. So let's start with taking a look at the big highlights of April, and then we can drill down into the week ahead. So what have we got to look forward to? Well, we've got our personal planets left to ingress into Taurus and the commencement of Taurus season itself. We have Pluto stationing retrograde at the end of the month at 26 degrees Capricorn. We have a new moon in Aries and a full moon in Scorpio. Saturn decides to play ball with the collective. The personal planets square off Pluto in a waxing square before they hit Taurus. And then they go on to conjunct Uranus. Feels a bit big, doesn't it? Our transpersonal planets tend to be radiating as background noise most of the time because they are so slow. They kind of sit there and resonate, and because they don't move that quickly, we get used to them. But this month our awareness is fixed on Pluto, a side serving of Pluto, followed by a big old bowl of Uranus. And so we're going to be challenging on a personal level and then embodying afterwards. And when I look at Sun, Mercury and Venus squaring up against Pluto, it kind of puts me in mind of the X-Wings firing at the Death Star in Star Wars. I never really need much of an excuse to talk about Star Wars, but this is a nice crossover, I think. Astrology meets Star Wars, we like that one. We're going to be challenging our subconscious on a personal level, and we're going to be very aware of that underbelly of Pluto and Capricorn. And squares are stressful aspects, but in astrology, I think we need to bring that in a little bit and perhaps depolarize slightly. Stress is tension. Everything related has tension, like an energetic chord or a resonance holding things in relation to each other. That's the whole premise of astrology, really. But when we think of stress, we can quite often groan or we can get anxious. Honestly, though, we need stress in our lives. We need that tension. If you went bungee jumping and your cord was slack, you'd be in trouble, wouldn't you? Yeah, if we look at it that way. And we need that sort of sense of tension, that dynamic feeling to move forward and make headway into the world. And so with squares, what we tend to have is just enough tension to set us in a direction, be that an internal decision of how you're going to be, how you're going to act, or actual physical decisions in the world that will affect you. And this is going to be playing out the whole month, really. And everything we set in motion will then be internalized when Pluto starts to go backwards in the sky. And we'll be mulling this over. We'll be absorbing April's activity right through into October and beyond. So there's a lot going on there, isn't there? And we've already talked how Pluto is manifesting collectively for all of us. Pluto in Capricorn can represent the spine of society. It can also represent the politicalization of DNA, of science, of your human self, indeed of your soul itself. We all knew that Pluto in Capricorn was going to be testing. We've only got another 3 years though before he moves off into Aquarius in 2024. And what I find really interesting, as we just said, is how we get this massive flurry of activity just before he goes retrograde. And so the actions we take, the decisions we set ourselves on in April, be it that internal shift or that physical action out in the world, that's going to last. Yeah, whatever you do or don't do is going to stay with you and is going to be a part of your vibration all the way through Pluto retrograde. And so a lot of this really is pointing to spiritual and individuating growth, particularly if we look to the fact that all of these planets then go on to absorb Uranus afterwards. When you have two planets conjunct, they kind of amalgamate. Yeah, you get that mix of the two. So we're going to have the Sun, we're going to have Venus, we're going to have Mercury. All three of them are going to absorb this Uranian sense in Taurus, which to me at least represents the higher mind, Father Sky, embodied within the person, within the individual. I said big, didn't I? I think I meant it. So we're coming into this powerful transformation and awareness. And a lot of the Sabian oracles actually are pointing at this emergence coming directly from nature herself, as in matriarchy, that powerful transformation the planet is going through, is working through us. And April will see a turning point for the better for a lot of people. And I don't know if any of you follow somebody called Oracle Girl, but she's very tapped into this at the moment. So if you haven't and you feel like you want to check her out, go take a look. She's cool. And somebody else I've been paying attention to recently is Shaman Durek. He's excellent. So if you need some kind of spiritual advice and sustenance, honestly, go and check those two out. I really recommend them. Back to our astrology, we will of course go further into the month as it plays out week by week. But for now, let's take a look at what we've got in store for us over the next 7 days or so. So first of all, I just want to say a quick shout out to all of my Christ consciousness friends, those of you celebrating Easter Sunday and the resurrection today. I hope you have a blessed, beautiful, contemplative, peaceful period ahead of you. And very fitting, I think, that we have our lovely third quarter moon in Capricorn on the same day. And I quite like the way this one was described. An ancient bas-relief carved in granite remains a witness to a long-lost culture. Wow. Beautiful, isn't it? For me, the moon in Capricorn certainly speaks of matriarchy, but it also feels quite south nodey. I know that's not really a word, but it does. It feels quite south nodey to me, this, especially as it's in conjunct the north node and in simpatico with the south. I feel as though the third quarter moon is lending a look back to the past. What can we salvage? What do we need to return to? And this is important for a lot of us who do feel uprooted, who do fear that a lot of what needs preservation is going by the wayside, as if we are that long lost culture ourselves. And I also think it shows us that what matters is well rooted and will last, irrespective of whether it's found or not, you know, at least is capable of being resurrected. And I also think that this moon talks of how the many make us as a society great too, and that when we get the balance of the group and the individual, when we get that right, we have constructive over constrictive. Yeah, we can achieve greatness as humans. But I think mostly this moon, it speaks to the positive attributes of Saturn. And given we have a whole month of Saturn Capricorn aspect, it might be a really good idea to take a deep dive into what life is like when Saturn is our friend. And when we can relate the right way, when we're able to see it as our friend and use it constructively. So on the Sabian oracle note, if we look to ancient history, for me, and I'm sure people will disagree, you are entitled to, by the way. If you do disagree, let me know. What's your opinion? So sticking along the ancient history vibes, we can see the ideology personified in various forms. And in honor of the moon, we are going to look at the female aspect of Saturn, which doesn't get enough press at all. In ancient Egypt, she was known as Seshat, with the seven-sided star above her. The seven-sided star, of course, relating to the Pleiades, to the Fae folk and planetary magic. And she is the divine timekeeper. Seshat is the goddess of astronomy, of astrology and architecture. She assisted the pharaoh in the stretching of the cord ceremony. And this was a sacred act that ensured the ancient Egyptian architecture was in line with the northern stars. Also, Pharaoh's soul could travel back home. And Ptah, for example, in accordance with a lot of creation stories, Ptah breathed life into the world through his heart and through his word. Common connotations held by the Egyptians to describe this beloved creator god were master of ceremonies, answerer of prayers, master of justice. Ptah was invoked when any royal architecture was underway, depicted as a green-skinned, clothed in white being. And creation has always been seen as divine, bringing divinity into matter to assist, protect, and facilitate citizens. Accordingly, Imhotep, the high priest of Ra, chancellor and architect of the Step Pyramid, he was believed to have been his son. And here we have an earthly manifestation of statesmanship pertaining to architecture, religion, and law. All of these are within the outer Capricorn realm. We can really see this divine being channeled into society. And with that, Capricorn knows what matters. But we have a double meaning with this, don't we? Yeah. Firstly, we have self-worth, what holds meaning, and the cultivation of our experience in relating to and containing the world around us. Secondly, we have brought forward into matter that which we have given meaning to and what we wish to see in the world. This is the physical structure and order that we see around us, our buildings, our society, our rules, our regulation. What matters is brought into matter with our own personal voice of authority. And if we go back to our medical astrology that we touched on a few weeks ago, Capricorn is the container for society, just as it's the container for the human, being related to our skin and our bones, and the container for consciousness itself here in the earth realm. In a body, we have skin, bones formed to contain the organs, mind, thought, and spirit, all in one unique package, a form of holism. And so too in society, Capricorn energy will contain the many elements required to make up a functioning whole, as it were. As with the individual, so with the collective. As with the collective, so with the divine. And this can mean we have a tricky balance to manage, I think. A tricky balance to manage and master. Cultural conditioning and conforming, they're a requirement of Capricorn. But balancing and cooperation are also necessary. There is the question, should the cup be suited to the water or the water to the cup? And the answer is both premises are true. There needs to be cooperation and adaptability by all parties, even Capricorn. And this is the higher aspect, to support and to enable expression of the self or society, not the repression or constriction of such. Any attempt to repress society and indeed the self will result in a full sense of guilt and active rebellion. Guilt and shaming and active rebellion, which can make Capricorn want to enforce even tighter control and stricter boundaries. And here, where we go from heaven on earth, benevolence of the creator turned into tyranny, there has to be this balancing act and a mutual agreement between all parties, discernment versus judgment, if you will. And as well on this theme, I think everything needs to be in synchronicity. If we go back to our body analogy, for example, the internal organs, the soul, the spirit, and likewise again externally, the confines of society, law, regulation, and the people living within it, sacred geometry will hold this balance. Divine principles will hold this balance. And when the two aren't in sync, we can have disastrous consequences, and we have to wonder who is benefiting from the situation. And if we relate this personally to our own natal chart, where we have Capricorn, where we have Saturn, and what we have sat in our 10th house is where and how we all use our voice of authority, if we use it at all. And it will show us in what ways we seek to act as a container and how we choose to lead within society. This is different to the likes of Leo and Aries, who are both concerned with creative expression and impulse. But Capricorn is more on behalf of the status quo, on behalf of society. These aspects within our natal chart will all show us how well we're able to conform to society. So can you see just how vital our Capricorn energy is for society, for cultivating things that matter, for cultivating and sustaining a container, but equally how delicate a balance this is, and how Capricorn needs to support and nurture, almost in line with the 10-4 axis, because the minute it constricts, we get distortion. Our energies distort, and instead of holism, instead of everything working in accordance with divine principles, achieving growth and support for all, we get imbalance, we get judgment, we get shame, and then we get the need for rebellion. And this is where, of course, Uranus, Aquarius, and the 11th house come into play. And so this whole balance, this whole need for constructive containment as opposed to constrictive strangulation will come into play for us, is in play for us right now. And you'll see where you stand in this. Are you happy where you are? Does this need to be changed up for you? Let's remember third quarters are our outer representations. So allow the world to show you the balance. What are you seeing? How are you using your personal power? And what do you want your contribution to be? Yeah? You might realize perhaps you're stood in a place you don't resonate with anymore. You might want to change tack, and you might want to put your power somewhere else. Are you being shamed? Are you being scared? Do you feel the need to rebel? All of this is coming up under the third quarter moon in Capricorn. It's a lot to think about, isn't it? A lot to mull over for sure. And 2 days later, on the 6th, we get this sentiment echoed twice, with the Sun conjunct Ceres at 17 degrees Aries, and when the moon passes over Saturn at 11 degrees Aquarius. Both of these aspects, again, sort of speak to that matriarchy element, with Ceres in play and the moon and Saturn in play. We have a rule quite often forgotten in astrology, is that the important messages from the planets will tend to arrive at least 3 times, in that we will see the same message repeated thrice. Very Uranian. But quite often when we assess a natal chart, for example, it's good to bear that in mind, because these are the messages coming loud and clear for the individual to hear. And so, yeah, here we have 2 more hits for us, don't we? We have Ceres and the Sun combining to illuminate to the world that which it is currently cultivating. Mirroring this, the moon conjunct Saturn. Look out across the globe. What do you see humanity holding dear and nurturing? Where do you wish to be, and what do you wish to be protecting? We're seeing strong feminine power rising here, as initiated during the equinox. So pull on this if you need to, and many of us do. But also make sure you honour, love, and add to it as well. Again, where are we contributing to the divine feminine spark? And these aspects really put me in mind of really powerful, strong, feminine leaders. If we look at Vandana Shiva, for example, all the work she's done. If we look at the likes of Judy Mikovich, if we look at these powerful women who are standing up for what they believe in and what they know is right, what they know we as society and what the planet needs. These are the voices that are really, really standing up in a traditional matriarchy sense. So, yeah, keep your eyes out and take a look. See what's happening in the world. See where people are standing up for what's right, where people are standing up for nature, where people are standing up for Gaia, where people are standing up for the collective. Let's not forget that Venus began a whole new cycle when she conjuncted the Sun a couple of weeks ago. And this speaks to that, doesn't it, really? That divine feminine ethos. Of course, we need to remember the divine feminine is within us all. It's a balancing principle. The yin, the yang, the negative, the positive, the electro, the magnetic. It's all balance. And again, let's relate this back to Capricorn. Capricorn only works well when it is balanced. This is what we're calling for here. On the 9th, we have aspects involving our Mars, our Neptune and Mercury again. They're all at it, sorting themselves out in the wash. This time Mars is squaring Neptune and Mercury is conjunct Chiron. And I think a lot of this is conclusion of the dynamics of the last 2 weeks. If you recall, we've had a lot of interplay between Mars, Mercury, Neptune and the North Node. So on the one hand, we've got Mercury and Chiron conjunct. Then in Pisces, we've got the Neptune and the Moon conjunct, and they are squaring off against Mars, who is conjunct Bellatrix. And I don't think we've talked that much about Bellatrix. I don't tend to use fixed stars too much in my astrology, but Bellatrix holds a lot of personal significance for me, and I think it probably holds a lot of significance for a lot of people, even though they might not necessarily be aware of it. Bellatrix is one of the stars of the Orion constellation. She's directly above Mintaka, and I think Arabian astrology has known her as the lion. We would perhaps be more familiar with her as the Amazon star. Bellatrix does mean female warrior. And being up on Orion's shoulder, and those of you familiar with Brady's Book of Fixed Stars will already know this, but if Orion wants to look at Bellatrix, he has to turn around and he has to see his shadow. If you imagine looking at your shoulder, you're going to be looking behind you as well, aren't you? And this is beautiful, I think. We have so much connotation here of the necessity of confronting the shadow, the necessity of doing that work, doing that reflective piece to call ourselves back to center, to walk through duality, to walk through polarity. And quite often the more sort of forward, masculine, positively polarized planets don't necessarily tend to look back and be that retrospective. It's more on to the next one. Would be Mars's ethos. So for him to be in a position in the cosmos where he is sat right next to that female warrior star who calls him to look at his shadow at exactly the same time as Mercury is conjunct Chiron, the wounded healer. We have lots to deal with here, don't we? So with Chiron and Mercury conjunct, anything conjunct Chiron can kind of become a walking wound, like literally, if we think of the mythology of Chiron. And certainly in Aries, we have this whole new cycle for Mercury, this whole new cycle of thought forms and experience of others and the world. And so when he's conjunct Chiron in this whole new cycle, we question and we see where perhaps we haven't been free to speak our truths in the past. How we've been hurt while making sense of our experiences here on the physical. A difficult one to face, let alone at the same time as Mars is doing his thing over in Gemini. So both our planet of logic and communication, our planet of forward dynamism in the world, they are both being called to stop. They are both being called to see where they need to be healed. Yeah, just take a second, guys. Is what they're being told. So you don't go on and constantly relive these patterns of suffering, these patterns of a lack of reconciliation, and therefore spread them across the ecliptic as you go. Take time to reconcile yourselves. And with Neptune and the Moon conjunct, that really adds the support that both of these guys need. Yes, it is in square to Mars, so we will perhaps be more triggered into action from this perspective. But overall, when the Moon is conjunct Neptune, at the same time as these other planets being conjunct, we are being lent that really, really peaceable, that universal love, that acceptance that it's okay to take a look at the parts of yourself that you've been scared to look at in the past. Yeah, it's actually very much in line with that nurturing that we've seen earlier on in the week, that supportive capacity that the heavens can have for us when we tap into it, and when we choose to see what's available to make the most of, what's available to grow, what we can work with in cycles, what we can work with in order to heal ourselves, to make sure going forward our actions and our thoughts and our communication are aligned to the true person that we are, which of course will be different for everybody. But this is really great. This is a really great closure for me on the last 2 weeks that we've had. Might involve a bit of soul searching, but it will really be worth it, I think. This is a time to really feel into yourself and really reflect upon where you've come. And I think that whole thought form of there have been no mistakes. You haven't done anything wrong. Everything you have done, everything you've experienced, everything you've been through has led you to this very moment. What do you need to take forward with you now? What do you need to heal? What do you need to release? What do you need to love? What do you need to nurture back to center? All of this is being called for. So I think this is a day for gentle compassion for sure. Gentle compassion, and hold yourself in integrity, because you're worth this time. You are worth taking the time to honor yourself and love yourself, recognize your own truths, recognize your own healing needs and act upon them. It's okay to look at the self. You know, Mars is certainly saying that you need to look at yourself. And that's not in a judgy way. That's in everybody needs to look at themselves first. There's a hell of a lot of support in the skies for us here, guys. And so we finish up on the 10th of April. We have Saturn in Aquarius at 12 degrees, trine the North Node in Gemini at 12 degrees. And this one's interesting. We've talked a lot about how Saturn is ironing itself out in Aquarius. Ideally, when we have Saturn within the Aquarian archetype, we build new, we're innovative, we create. There's quite often a genius spark attached to this. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not all completely lovely and beautiful. For example, the Cray twins had Saturn in Aquarius in their natal chart. But overall, this would speak to, again, this theme of the divine architect. Yeah, this higher mind inspiration to create new and innovative solutions for society. That's lending its energy to the North Node in Gemini, and this will be an interesting one. This will be a good one to see. We may just suddenly become aware of new innovations and inspirations that we didn't even know existed. Yeah, this can crop up out of the blue. I do have to say, however, it does kind of have a build back better bullshit kind of vibe to it. So yeah, take a look around you. What's happening around the 10th of April over the next couple of days? What's suddenly being introduced that you didn't think was going to happen? What are people up to? What's authority up to? Watch this one, guys, for sure. It can work both ways, as astrology always does. So yeah, it does potentially have that icky vibe to it, but remember that this is energy that you can channel as well. Yeah, the planets, the heavens, they're open to all of us to resonate with. Keep that one in mind with this aspect. It's kind of got a slightly mad professor vibe to it, you know, that spark of genius, but that spark of genius that will last, that's got enough clout about it to really begin to create something of worth, something that we will benefit from, that in a way that we just simply haven't seen before. So this is going to be a really, really interesting aspect. So be open to supporting your inner genius. We've got the higher mind channeling through structure, through authority, and we can really use that to our best interest if we harness it for ourselves. So enjoy playing with that one on the 10th. I hope you get on well with it. Take care, guys. If you need me, just drop me a message, just get in touch. If anybody needs a reading, I'm open for bookings at the moment. You can check that out on the website. And equally, if you haven't, head over to Instagram, because there tends to be quite frequent posts on the current astrology there too. So lots of love to you guys. Take care, take it easy, and we'll speak again soon.